what's going on? It's Monday. Hope you're having a good Memorial Day
In the
United States.
Yeah.
If you had the day off today, the garbage men certainly did.
Yeah. No garbage, no mail today.
Yeah, we have to remember to put the garbage out after the show.
Yep.
Because they're coming tomorrow instead of today. So yeah, as we had been talking about, threatening, depending on your point of view, we've been watching the Kolchak TV series from 1974/1975 TV season.
Yeah. Some of the episodes are on YouTube as CB.
Yeah.
But not all of them.
Yeah, I mean, they might all be on there somewhere, but like the one channel that we found only had 7 of them.
Yeah, and there are 20.
And there are 20.
Yeah.
The thing about it was that I did on my Scare Salon channel a while back. I did a long post and a video about the TV movies which preceded the TV series. So we probably won't be... I might like talk a little bit about that just for some context. Because one of the episodes was actually sort of a sequel to it. Not really a sequel, but it was kind of related to the first movie. But I had been wanting to watch the series for a really long time. I first heard about it in Stephen King's book, Danse Macabre, which came out in 1981, and which I read probably 40 bajillion times, roughly. And he was a big fan of that show, and I was like, man, that sounds really good. Now, if you haven't heard of this show, like I said, it's from the 70s if you're too young or something like that.
Like 74, I think, huh?
70, yeah, it was the 1974/75 TV season.
So old, I was 5 when this came out.
Yeah, I was little. I was like, I was 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So I didn't see it. And well, the thing about it is I think most people didn't watch the series. Well, I don't know if I'd say that, but I mean, a lot of people didn't watch the series when it came out. I feel like it didn't start getting popular and start getting a cult following until later on, like in the late 70s, because what happened was I think this originally was on ABC, and then later on CBS picked it up like for syndication and showed it as like late night. Like, they'd show an episode of this, and then they'd show, like, a Hammer film or something, like late at night. Okay. And a lot of people remember it fondly from that, because that was, like, late 70s. So it was, like, CBS, like, at night, and then you'd watch, like, the cheesy Christopher Lee movie or whatever.
I'm 55. I have no recollection of this. I don't think I ever saw it. And it's good. Real good.
It's a lot of fun. I really like this show a lot.
Supposedly the inspiration for the X-Files.
Yeah, Chris Carter has said as much. He said about 30% of the X-Files is based on... Well, and the thing about it, too, is that they got Darren McGavin. They asked Darren McGavin to come back to be on the X-Files and play Kolchak. But he's like, well, I don't really want to play Kolchak. So they're like, well... They asked if he could be one of the characters' dads, and he's like, I don't really know if I want to do that either. So they actually let him be Arthur Dale, the father of the X-Files.
Okay.
So he actually was a character on that show as an homage because Chris Carter was such a big fan of Kolchak and used it as inspiration. I don't know. So this is the...
This is it?
This is the DVD that has all 20 episodes.
Yeah, and I think there's, 3 or 4 discs in there.
Yeah, something like that.
I got that off of Amazon for $12.
Yeah.
It's a good
purchase. Not Blu-ray. I do think this is available on Blu-ray. As far as I'm aware.
I don't think it's Blu-ray.
No, I said no. Yeah. I said I think it is available on Blu-ray because I've seen other channels reviewing it.
Yeah.
The movies I think are harder to get hold of. The movies I think were available on Blu-ray. I think maybe Kino Lorber did it. And I think they both came on like a double feature kind of disc, and like actually the artwork on them was really nice. But I think it's out of print now. So I don't know if you can get... I mean, you might be able to get it easy. I didn't check.
Yeah. It's actually 5
discs with 4 episodes each.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how this came about.
And there's Kolchak on the cover.
Yeah, good old Darren McGavin.
It's kind of like a detective flick, but it's about a newspaper reporter.
Yeah.
And he's constantly getting involved in these cases. He's got a police scanner, and he knows the cops, and he's got a running relationship with the cops, and... Turns out he picks up these weird cases, and turns out paranormal shit's happening in it.
Every single time.
I don't think it's every time, but every story they're telling
yeah.
Is that
they don't show you all the
paranormal shit happens. They're kind of derivative. There's a vampire one. There's going to be a ghost one, a werewolf one, a zombie one. It's a UFO one. So they're not real. There's a headless horseman one that I liked. That one. It was involved a headless motorcycle guy.
Yeah.
But they're based on classic tales. Each episode, or something in the paranormal scene of the 70s. Psychic abilities.
Yeah.
So it ends up
spontaneous human combustion.
Spontaneous human combustion. They got an episode for all the major phenomenon. And they're good. And they are, it is paranormal.
Yeah.
It's not,
it's
ambiguous.
not like a Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, it's not Scooby-Doo, and it's where it turns out it's fake. No, and it's not ambiguous. It's like, oh no, that was real. There are lizard men living in the center of the earth, protecting eggs.
Could be.
That was a weird one too, man. Fucking, but it's a good series, man. It's fun. I would put it on par with Night Gallery. About like Night Gallery.
Yeah, it's like Night Gallery. I kind of feel like most of those, well, other than those silly like little comedic interstitials they used to put in between the longer stories, which I did not like. But this one, the thing about it, so this started out actually as a novel, an unpublished novel called The Kolchak Papers, written by a guy named Jeff Rice. And he was shopping it around, like trying to get the novel published, and he wasn't really having a lot of luck, evidently. But then his agent or somebody's agent or something read it and said, man, that would make a great movie. So they kind of shopped it around, and then eventually like ABC bought it to do like a movie of the week. So the first one, which is based on his novel, is a vampire story, and like I said, I talked about that on my other Scare Salon video where I talked about the first two Kolchak movies. Like, it came out in 1972, so it was like movie of the week, and it was hugely, hugely popular. I think at the time, it was like, it had the most viewers of any like original TV movie like ever. I'm sure that's been surpassed now, but at the time it was like hugely, hugely popular. And so obviously because so many people watched it, they rushed to like make a second one, which was called The Night Strangler, that came out in 1973. That was actually, I think the screenplay was done by Richard Matheson, of all people, and I think Dan Curtis actually directed or produced. Dan Curtis of Dark Shadows fame. And so this had like a lot of talent behind it. And that was really popular too. So then what had happened was there was supposed to be a third movie, which was going to be called The Night Killers. And that one was going to be about I think it was like government officials being taken over by androids, and aliens were doing it or something like that. So they wrote that, Richard Matheson wrote it, and then NBC said, or ABC rather, said, let's just do a whole series. Because it's like, obviously people really like this concept, and this is this idea like lends itself really well to a series. So they decided to do that. Now initially they ordered 26 episodes, which is about standard for that kind of series. Problem was though, they only ended up shooting 20 of them because mostly Darren McGavin, he was kind of getting sick of what he called the Monster of the Week formula. I don't know if there was some kind of money dispute or something like that, or some kind of credit. He was doing like a lot of the work of a producer without being credited as a producer, like a lot of script rewrites and stuff like that. And so he asked if he could be let out of his contract. So there are actually, there were 6 unproduced episodes. 3 of the scripts of those are still floating around, and actually Richard Matheson, or whoever published it, like they actually did publish them in a book like a few years back, the unproduced scripts. So I have written down what they are like later on, because I can't really remember offhand, but yeah, so that is out there. I don't know what the other 3 were going to be about, but the thing about it, like I said, when it first aired in the 1974 season, like it started in the fall of 1974, they stuck it in the Friday night slot, like at 10 p.m. or something, which is not a great, really for any show. And especially this was kind of aimed toward like a younger audience. And, younger people are usually out on Friday nights and are not watching TV. So it was kind of shitty that they stuck it there.
It's funny that they aimed it towards a younger audience because it doesn't feel like it's aimed at a younger audience. It's actually feels like it's aimed at a middle-aged audience. It has a lot of sophisticated dialogue and stories.
Yeah, I really like the dialogue in this. It's very witty.
Yeah, it's real funny. Kolchak he's a newspaper reporter, but the format and the way the stories go out, it's basically a PI or a private investigator story. Yeah. He's kind of like he kind of looks like a private eye, and kind of handles himself as kind of, I wouldn't say it's super comedic, but Kolchak's got a kind of a cool personality for an old dude at the time. He's an old, great generation dude. Now he's not even a boomer, I don't think. I think he was older.
Probably not.
I think he's older than a boomer.
I don't know how old Darren McGavin was when he.
Yeah, he's kind of reminds me in a certain way, kind of like Columbo. That was another great series.
Where he was just kind of this sloppy dude that people didn't really take seriously, but he was like really.
But he had a lot of good tricks. He would trick people and lie and flip scripts and he did all kinds of shit. He's a pretty cool character. Especially for the time, and he wore a suit, but he had sneakers on, which that's a little bit ahead of time.
Yeah,
they kept showing that. He wore sneakers. You know, he'd go down in the sewers and fight the damn fucking Louisiana swamp monster. He just did all kinds of cool shit in the movie. No, it's not fucking modern special effects. It's practical effects, and they're TV level practical effects.
Yeah, so some of them are pretty.
Yeah. The lizard man, of course, doesn't look real. All right, but that's not what these programs are about. Most of this is character movies and fun. My only gripe about it is that the stories are kind of derivative. You know, it's a vampire story. You know, it's a werewolf story. You know, but I kind of think for the first season they were trying to cover all the bases. You know,
all the classic
shit. The way they're written, they're standalones, so you could jump in anywhere in that series. There isn't continuity.
You don't have to watch them in any particular order.
So each one is a standalone. They used to do that back in the day because they never could guarantee the order in which they played.
When they went into syndication, they might mix them all up.
And people would be like, man, what? You know, even Star Trek, the first season wasn't like that. The classic Trek were all standalones.
Yeah, pretty much. You don't have to watch it in particular order.
You could tell the first, second, and third season apart. Shit had got more complicated, but you could watch them all in any order you wanted. It didn't matter. And so it's like that, the series. And when you're doing that television format, you can't do a long, overarching story arcs and have people come back on later episodes to maybe like to reprise a visit. There's none of that in this. That's the only limitation. But that was a built-in limitation for television back then. That was what the fucking studio executives wanted. They didn't want any linear storytelling across episodes. They didn't. So that's the only weakness. See, the X-Files kind of had that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's kind of more maybe a modern thing.
More of a modern thing, yeah.
Where it's like, well, even a show like this, I was watching a video of quite a long video of a guy who reviewed this series and was like a big fan, and he was talking about his dream remake, because they did remake this, which we'll bring up in a little bit. But he's like, if they were going to remake it, he's like, I would do like probably a seasonal like overarching story, but I would keep the kind of monster of the week format, but there would just be kind of a bigger story going on, like an arc, like overarching. Yeah. He's like, I would probably do that just to be more in line with like
what modern series are like.
Had.
There was overarching that somebody knew about the UFOs.
Right. That's kind of the same thing that he was talking about doing.
Right. Yeah.
And so that was like something that they would be constantly referring to, but then there was other shit going on.
Right.
Which, is kind of like a real newspaper reporter or a real investigator or something like that. You would have like this big long case you were working on, and then all these other little cases you would have to work on in the interim.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like it's kind of a good format to come at. October, as Bill 33 says, I saw this when it was new, believe it or not.
Damn.
October Ray said, yeah, you're a little bit older than we are. Not that much older, though. Yeah. I was almost old enough to have watched this when it
I
came
wouldn't
out.
have liked this at 5. Too adult.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, a lot of the the cool shit about this. Like, I think if I was little when I had seen it, probably I would have been scared by some of the monsters. Because some of the monsters, like, are cheesy, but some of the shit's, like, kind of legit scary.
I wouldn't have
or
been
at least would have been to a kid. But you wouldn't have really appreciated... The wit and, like, all the sharp dialogue and all the stuff. Especially the shit between Kolchak and
his
Tony
boss.
Vincenzo.
Yeah, Vincenzo. Yeah.
Who is, you know, that actor. Simon Oakland. He was in Psycho.
Yeah.
So he was the
the
psychiatrist at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, among other things, he's been in a million things, but like I think that's probably what most people recognize him from.
Yeah.
Most. But like the fact that they were just kind of that he was always like yelling at him, and he was like always making him is like do this story, and he's just like I'm totally gonna do that, and he just totally wouldn't.
Doing
and
something else.
He would just go completely off script and do his own fucking thing, and then so like Tony was always yelling at him, but he never fired him though.
No.
He always kind of threatened to.
They were friends. And he'd come up with a good story.
Yeah.
So, you know.
And they could never publish, like, anything that he wrote, because it was always,
that's like, nobody will believe this.
Like a big cover-up.
Yeah.
There was always a big cover-up.
Yeah, it depended. Yeah, they couldn't publish any of that, did they?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think a couple times they did end up publishing something, but then sometimes... Yeah. Well, so they addressed this in the movie. I think either the first or the second movie, because it's been a little while since I've seen the movies. But they did address... He wrote about, you know, because in the original Night Stalker movie from 1972, he was chasing a vampire that, well, it was a serial, everybody thought it was a serial killer because all these women were turning out dead, but then he thought it was a vampire, and obviously nobody believed it. But then eventually, like, everyone was kind of like, oh shit, like, he is a vampire, and he got everybody on his side, and they had to fight him and all this, go to his lair and all this other stuff. But the thing about it was that, in the end, I think they told him, you know, write it all out just like it happened and we'll publish it, but then they ended up not being able to do that, like, because all the high mucky mucks came down on it. So they ended up publishing another story under his name that was like a cover story.
Yeah.
So I don't think they brought that up in any of the TV series, but they did bring that up in one of the movies.
A lot of the episodes kind of have fucking exposition. He starts off showing you something that fucked up happened, and then he tells you how it happened later on. Like, it goes back, like, this is what happened and this is how it started, you know, that kind of shit. And then at the end, he's like, no one will ever believe me.
Yeah.
So I can't fucking say anything about this. Now, I don't know how he got arrested, because some of this shit involved people getting killed when he was there.
He did get arrested a couple times.
Yeah.
But I think everybody was so familiar with him, because all the cops knew him. They all hated him, or, you know, they were always like,
well, they were frenemies.
Yeah, kind of.
They just thought he was annoying. Because he was constantly
shit up. Yeah. He was like, remember that one, like, in the, I think it was the alien one, with the invisible alien, like, where the alien was there, like, stealing the lead.
Yeah.
And, like, there's this huge shootout, and he's just walking in the middle of the shootout, and they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's
like, get out of here.
It's funny the way, you know, the way it is, but it's just supposed to, that's the tone of the fucking series. It's good. It's got a lot of classic actors and actresses show up in this shit, too. 70s hotties. Fucking Eric Estrada shows up in one.
Yeah, somebody
where he fucking shows up
Ramon
as an ancient Aztec sacrificial dude, and fucking he's all fucking walking around half naked and shit. He's fucking jacked. For the 70s. I see how he got that job on Chips.
Yeah,
and he ended up being a sex symbol for a while. If you guys are too young to remember that, when he was on Chip, him, Ponch and John.
Ponch and John.
Yeah, girls had posters of them up and fucking shit. But I see how Estrada got that job. Yeah, he was fucking he was stacked.
Yeah, Ramon said, I just watched the Eric Estrada one with the Aztec mummy.
Yeah,
that one was actually pretty good. I think Tom missed this because he might have been in the bathroom. But the first time that Eric Estrada's character is introduced, he's like the vice president, quote unquote, of this hotel where there's like this fancy hotel. But then it turns out that he just got brought there by the big boss because he's going to be the willing sacrifice for the mummy and all this other stuff. And the first time that he's introduced, he is wearing the most amazing pink leisure suit.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Like, I was like, wow, look at that.
Yeah.
With like a dark blue like shirt with kind of the poofy, you know how they were in the 70s, like with the sort of poofy ass sleeves and the big
shit in it.
But it was like super pink, and I was just like, wow, that is really something. Like that leisure suit. I've seen the powder blue ones. That was a pretty common. I think even my dad had one. But I had never seen a pink one like that, and I was just kind of like, "Wow, that's amazing."
Yeah,
I've never seen that.
Then a bunch of throughout the series, throughout the season, A bunch of gorgeous actresses that you grew up with seeing show up. One of them shows up. She's playing a fucking ancient Greek goddess.
She's Helen of Troy.
Helen of Troy, yeah, that's right. And she's sacrificing people, draining their youth so she can stay young and beautiful. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I forgot what the name of that actress.
The Youth Killer, Kathy Lee Crosby.
Kathy Lee Crosby, that's right.
Kathy Lee Crosby.
Yeah, and she looks great in it. It's just a cool series. Very cool. I liked it.
Like I said, it's a lot of fun. The formula of every episode is pretty similar, and like you said, they did do like a lot of the classic monsters, like your vampires, your werewolves. They had a witch one.
They didn't do a Frankenstein, from what I think.
They did. They did a killer robot one. Yeah. They did an alien one, but they did a couple of weird ones.
Werewolf.
Yeah, I said yeah. Yeah, they did a zombie, but like a Haitian zombie. Not like a George Romero.
And that
zombie.
one, it had some good fucking good makeup effects. That fucking zombie looked rotten as shit.
That one scene,
he's in the junkyard,
where he goes through the junkyard to find the zombie.
Yeah.
Because this episode kind of had the same plot as Zombie Nightmare, with that Canadian movie that I think came out later, where the mother of the zombie did zombie stuff to make him come back and take revenge on the people that killed him. They were like mobsters or something, and so he would go out and kill people, but then he would go dormant. And Kolchak figured out that he was sleeping it was like a hearse, right, junkyard.
Yeah.
And he found out where he was, and he had to go there and set up white candles, and he had to pour salt in its mouth while it was sleeping, and then sew its mouth shut.
Yeah.
And so it was a really creepy. I was like, wow.
Talking about Bokors and shit.
Yeah, so for 1974, I was like, that was pretty creepy. That probably would have scared the shit out of me if I'd seen it when I was little.
That'd have been too much. Yeah, when he comes up out there like that. Yeah.
Yeah, when he's in there trying to sew the lips with the salt in it.
Yeah.
And then its eyes open. Yeah. I was like, wow, that was really well done.
And the dude's big. The dude that's playing the zombie, he's fucking big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. So it's some of the monsters were not great. But what I was going to say was that the one that was Horror in the Heights, which I think was written by Jimmy Sangster, who did a lot of Hammer films, that was the one with the Rakshasa, the Hindu.
Yeah.
And that was actually pretty cool, because I thought that was a monster that really wasn't. I mean, now everybody knows it because of D&D. Yeah. And that's actually where this show is actually where D&D got the idea to use that monster.
Okay.
But the cool thing about that monster was that it could, it showed itself to you as whoever you trusted the most.
Yeah.
It looked like they didn't show it a lot. It just kind of looked like this hulking monster kind of thing. But then when the person was seeing it, they were perceiving it as, oh hey, it's my mom, or hey, it's my best friend, or whatever. So it's so it was really insidious like that. So they'd be like, hey, what are you doing here? And then it would kill you and eat you.
They had a Louisiana fucking swamp monster.
Yeah, they had a swamp monster one too.
Yeah, it's basically Swamp Thing.
Père Malfait.
Yeah, Père Malfait, I think that's what they call it.
Father of sin, or father of something like that.
And it kind of looks like Swamp Thing, kind of.
Yeah.
And it was more like a psychic. It was like a psychic fucking apparition caused by a person, wasn't it? It wasn't solid, was it?
The Swamp Thing one was.
It was okay, because I thought somebody was kind of generating it. Maybe I misunderstood what the.
Wait a minute! Oh yeah, you're right, because that dude. Yeah, that's right, because that guy was sleeping.
You believed in it.
He was doing a sleep study.
Yeah, that's right.
And whenever he was sleeping,
Swamp Thing would come out.
the Swamp Thing would come out. Yeah, he was generating.
He was generating.
That's right. I forgot about that aspect.
Yeah,
of it.
and the sleep thing was kind of cool too, because that was kind of going back to the '70s with the Michael Crichton type thing, where you're gonna. Crichton would make he did fucking Westworld and shit like that, but you take something that's kind of based in science and then make it more pseudoscience and then science fiction, you know what I mean, where we're going to do a sleep study, we're going to study psychic abilities, just shit like that, you know what I mean? It was just cool. It's a cool series, man. Cool series. I liked it. Now, look, for you younger people, this is 70s, and 70s comes wrapped in its own kind of package, all right? It's 70s television. It's not a modern series. the older series is that 70s shit was easy to watch. It was kind of formatted. It was in a certain frame of reference. So they're kind of easy to watch and they're kind of comforting. We watched the whole thing sitting around eating snacks and shit on the bed.
Yeah.
And just laughing. Some of the shit that would happen. Now, for older people, there's an element of kind of nostalgia to it. You're like, oh, I remember that. And you see the old telephones and old fucking clothes.
Yeah, it's like, oh man,
cars.
my grandma had that lamp.
Yeah. And fucking Kolchak's got a cool car. He's got a 64 and a half fucking Mustang convertible.
That's kind of yellow.
Yellow Mustang convertible.
Well, pale yellow.
Yeah.
It's not a great color.
No. Well, it's hard to tell because it's, it's an old transfer.
Yeah.
But, and he's got a police scanner in there.
Yeah.
And he can...
So every time he's listening to the radio, he's like, ooh, a murder.
Oh, yeah, there's some fucking paranormal shit going on there. Which, look, I guarantee if you have any police scanners, you're going to find anything fucking exciting.
Well, another thing about it is that they don't usually come on and go, ooh, paranormal shit.
Yeah.
It's usually like,
here's
hey,
a crime or something that happens.
yeah, like a weird murder.
Yeah,
like,
weird
hey,
murder.
this dude just got thrown out of a 10-story window. Like, we don't know what happened.
Yeah, he drives over there and busts
anything
into the
that's
case.
weird, he'll just like bust in there, and it's hilarious because it's like everybody knows who he is because he's just this super nosy.
Or he's back at the office and he notices a new murder had happened, and this is kind of like the other ones that have been happening around the town, and he's going to get on a case and figure out, what the hell's going on, that kind of shit.
And the funny thing too is that
there's a Jack the Ripper one that was pretty good too.
I'm gonna say
and that was the same Ripper from Jack the Ripper time he was still alive.
Yeah, and
He's
here's what I was gonna say. When I saw that one, that might have been the first one that aired, if I'm remembering it correctly. And I think the episode was just called The Ripper.
Yeah.
And we were watching it, and it has the premise of Jack the Ripper killing 5 people every so often, like in a cyclical fashion, like to keep himself alive. And I was saying to myself, man, that story sounds really familiar. I said, I think that's a Robert Bloch story. And I wanted to see if they were acknowledging that. It's not the same, but then I looked back and I was like, yeah, because, I've been doing over on my Scare Salon channel, I've been doing Thriller with Boris Karloff. Mm-hmm. And on one of those episodes, they did an adaptation of a Robert Bloch story from 1943, which is called Yours Truly, Jack the Ripper. And it's basically that same premise, whereas like the actual Jack the Ripper, every 2 years and so many months, I don't remember exactly how long it was, he has to kill so many people like to stay alive, like it's some kind of black magic kind of thing. So I kind of feel like since that story came out such a long time ago, they also used it. You remember the original Star Trek episode Wolf in the Fold?
Yeah, it was Scotty.
That was based on that too.
Yeah, it was
on
Scotty.
That same story.
Yeah, Scotty.
I kind of feel like
of killing this girl on another planet.
Yeah.
It turns out it's like it's a spirit. It's a demon or something. Isn't that it was? It was like a demon that had possessed him.
Kinda, yeah. Or it was some kind of offering to a demon that was like keeping him alive or something like that.
Something like that.
But that Star Trek episode was based on that Robert Bloch story that the Thriller episode did a direct adaptation of. And I kind of feel like this episode of Kolchak, which is just called The Ripper, was based on the same idea.
Yeah.
But I didn't see in the credits like if
it wasn't a demon in the Star Trek thing. It was an invisible alien life form that was evil.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Remember, it was kind of satanic.
Yeah.
We would call it a demon.
Yeah.
For they just took demon and made it science fiction.
I think the Thriller episode, I'm trying to think if like they went the demon route. Like I said, that was kind of more based on they went the kind of black magic-y kind of route, but it was, I think it was kind of like he has to kill 5 victims every so often, like for a sacrifice so he'll stay alive. Somebody asked, did this show or the serial killer come first? This show did, because Ramirez, that was later, right?
I don't know that song.
Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Yeah, he came later.
Yeah, that was later. Yeah,
they're not talking about the same Night Stalker.
Yeah, this was a TV show. Well, like I said, the book that this was originally based on was actually called The Kolchak Papers. But for some reason they changed it to The Night Stalker. Actually, when they first aired the first few episodes, they just called it The Night Stalker. And then, because that's what the movie was called.
Yeah.
And then later they were like Kolchak the Night Stalker. So that's what it ended up being called. I almost want to remember too, also over on my Scare Salon channel, I did a video about the Norlis tapes, which was kind of NBC's answer to Kolchak because they had seen how successful Kolchak was. So they made this movie in 1973 called the Norliss Tapes, which was pretty much the same story. It had Roy Finnis in it, and it was just kind of like the first, they just did the pilot, like it never went to series, unfortunately, because I think it probably would have been pretty good. But it was essentially the same story as this. It was a guy who was an investigative reporter or something like that, and he was writing a book debunking psychics and paranormal stuff, but then he found out that all that shit was real. And then in the pilot episode, he disappears, and his editor goes to his apartment to see where he is and starts listening to all his tapes about all his cases. And that's kind of what the setup for it was. Like I said, they never went to series, so they didn't do the setup. But it was very, very similar in the sense that it wasn't, I don't think the Norliss Tapes, it's been a while since I've seen it. I don't think it was a vampire, but it was vampire-like. It was somebody that was like taking blood for immortality or something. Yeah. Which I kind of feel like both of the Kolchak movies. The first Kolchak movie was definitely vampire. I mean, obviously. The second one...
I haven't seen the movies. I gotta see the movies.
You probably really like him. He wasn't quite a vampire, but he was still taking blood to be immortal. Like, he had to kill so many people every 21 years or something. And then he started getting more and more corpsey, as the time went on. And so they were kind of similar in that regard. The thing about it is that the first movie, tonally, it's got humor in it, but it's not as funny as... I think... when the second movie, The Night Strangler, came out, it was like funnier.
Yeah.
The original movie, and the weird thing too is that in the original movie, the first movie, he had a girlfriend who he was going to marry, who they implied had been a sex worker.
Okay. Well,
but she worked in a casino. Her name was Gail, I think.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when it went to series, they made him like a confirmed bachelor kind of thing, where it's just like, I think that one psychic, remember that one psychic lady where that she was trying to like set him up, like with a woman or something. He's like, me married? No, like he just didn't want to do it.
That'd be better if he was hooking up with a Vegas ex hooker. It'd be a lot better. That'd be a lot more 70s because the 70s was a lot looser.
Well, because the original one was set in Vegas. That's where the first one was set in Vegas. Yeah. The second movie was set in Seattle.
Yeah.
And then the series is set in Chicago. Yeah. Even though most of it was shot in L.A.
That generation post 1960s, they didn't have the same stigmas that you had. They weren't very uptight. Ben Frail says some shit I like. He said,
where
basic up here. He says the fucking.
He said, love this show. And then he said, so silly, so entertaining.
What are the chances? What are the chances of one man running into all that paranormal? That's the tone of the movie, and you're supposed to kind of like roll with it and kind of laugh that this one dude finds all this, and just like you said, but at the end of most of the episodes, the evidence gets destroyed, and no one will believe him. That's kind of the That's kind of the way this.
But cops and shit see it too. It's just that it gets covered up.
Yeah, the cops see it.
And cops they're just like, nobody can. No, don't talk about it or you're kidding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The chief of police knows.
Because a lot of them saw the shit.
Yeah.
Too. Like, saw the same shit that he saw.
But then they would deny it.
But then they would deny it.
If you know it's good for you, you wouldn't say anything. You're not going to say anything.
It.
You know, if you know it's good for you, you're not going to say anything.
And they're not allowed
to lose their job.
They're not allowed to publish it or anything like that. So it's not like. So it's not like he's the only one on the show that sees this shit, because other people do see it.
Right. Which that's great when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because now the observer, or the people who's watching the program, says this paranormal shit's actually happening. And fucking the authorities can't say anything about it. Nobody would believe them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, so you're giving plausible deniability to the authority figures.
Right.
That's a great element.
Yeah, and I mean, I really like that.
That's why they're saying it's not real. They're saying it's not real, but it's real. Yeah. I want to believe. That's the fucking X-Files thing. I want to. That's where that's coming from.
But the cool thing about Kolchak's character, is that he doesn't come across as somebody that would be like really into
woo and shit. No,
woo shit.
No, he's not.
Like he's very down to earth.
Yeah,
he's very snarky.
Yeah,
but he just knows he's seen the shit before, and he knows where the evidence leads, and he's willing to go there when other people won't. You know what I mean?
Now that you're saying the idea that he had a girlfriend,
in the first movie he did.
That would have been better to keep that theme through him.
And in the first,
because it makes him more of a man. a normal guy. You know what I mean? That there are women that are interested in him. He's got little relationships going on.
I think they wanted him to be more of like a workaholic type.
Yeah.
Where he didn't have time for that because he was so focused on his job.
What that does is it makes the writing easier.
Well, you get that too.
You don't have to worry about continuity from one story to the next. Yeah. You don't have to keep track of what's happening with his relationships. That's why they did that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's all it is. I'm sure that was probably a big reason.
Yeah. You're because we don't know what order he's going to be watched in, so he can't have a girlfriend.
In the first movie, his girlfriend, who he's thinking of proposing to, she like mysteriously vanishes, and he never finds her. In the book, I think that the higher ups might have had her killed, or that was the implication.
Yeah.
And I said in the movie, and I think I even said this in my video, I said in the movie you could totally read it like that, like they just had her killed because he looked for her after he couldn't find her.
Yeah, the girlfriend angle would have been great in the series, because you can tell what they're doing is they're doing Sam Spade basically.
Yeah.
It's a spinoff of that, and the Sam Spade character had females around him that they're showing interest in him, and that would have been better. Yeah, he's kind of not a super young, handsome guy, but you just make it age appropriate, or at least something the audience will buy.
He is kind of charismatic, though.
Yeah.
And he does seem to have, not every episode, but they did seem to give him, like, a female sidekick sometimes. Like, that was just, like, that episode specific. Like, remember the one with the werewolf, which actually, a lot of people put this, like, near the bottom, but I actually kind of like, because the werewolf makeup does look pretty cheesy. But the fact that it was set on like a singles cruise just amused the fuck out of me. It was so fucking funny. Yeah. And just like the dude, especially the dude.
Hints of swapping and shit.
Yeah, and it was just like, it was so funny because it was 70s, y'all. Yeah. And it's just like the shit that they were, like the dude that he was in the room with, like his roommate or whatever, it was just like the classic 70s. Like him and his his ex-wife were on the cruise together. And it was implied that they were like swapping and like having a good fucking. So it was like
they were fuck buddies.
It was super funny. So it was like, and fucking Kolchak is just like whatever, and he had like the open shirt and like the chains and everything. It was just hysterical.
Very 70s, very cool.
Yeah, it was like super funny. So it's like all the singles cruise stuff like really made me laugh. But in that episode particularly, the dude's like his roommate's ex-wife sets him up with this other girl, like this other woman.
Yeah.
And so this other woman kind of gets intrigued by, what he's, because obviously he has been sent there to do a story on the singles cruise, and it so happens that there's a werewolf on board, as happens on some singles cruises, I guess. And so he starts investigating that.
The Wolfman, he's horny.
Although the funny thing about it is the Wolfman, he doesn't eat anybody. He mostly just like beats people up or
jumps out windows and shit
and throws people overboard. Like he just pushes them over.
Yeah, that's right. Didn't he jump through a window? I thought
they die.
I thought I remember him jumping through a window.
He might have jumped through a window.
Or he threw somebody through a window or something. I don't remember.
I know he threw a couple people overboard.
Maybe
Most people he just kind of like... Because I was thinking like werewolf, he just like tear people's throats out or like tear their arms off or something. But I guess they couldn't afford to show that. Yeah. So mostly he just kind of push people over.
Well, it's television.
Yeah.
So they can't show... You forget it's
so again,
television.
I thought that was kind of delightful. That this werewolf was just going around just shoving people. Yeah. Nerd.
Couldn't show any gore.
Like that.
Couldn't show any gore in 70s television.
Yeah. Although, like I said, some of the monsters in here were actually pretty cool.
Yeah. The zombie being the best one.
I think the zombie was the best one, was the creepiest looking one.
Yeah, it looked like something. That was good. That was like something out of a movie.
Yeah, and especially that scene, like I said, where he found the dormant zombie, like in the hearse in the junkyard.
Yeah. And
he was like pouring salt in this, but like trying not to wake it up and was trying to like sew its mouth shut and stuff. And I was just like, that's pretty cool. I was surprised that they showed that like on 70s TV. But yeah, I was gonna say like, I don't know which one was like my favorite out of all of them. I tended to like...
My favorite one was Chopper.
Yeah,
the
headless horseman,
but it's motorcycles.
I mean, it doesn't look great. Obviously,
no, it looks. You could tell it's a.
It obviously looks like someone riding a motorcycle with a fake thing, like a
fake
up
thing.
here,
yeah,
like with a leather jacket, with a little frame
and a sword. He's
cutting people's heads off with a sword.
Yeah.
But that was a fun story, though. Like I said, they were trying to update the headless horseman legend.
Yeah.
But it was like biker gangs. Yeah. And it was this whole thing where the guy that was doing it, because they thought it was weird because they're like, okay, this... And people saw it. Like I said, it wasn't like, because the security guard, like at this parking garage or something, and he's like, a dude in a leather jacket on this old motorcycle came in here and he didn't have a head.
Yeah, and he killed that guy.
And he came in here with a sword and he cut this dude's head off with a sword, and like, of course nobody believed him. But like Kolchak did, and he's like, ooh, tell me more about this headless motorcycle rider. This episode, by the way, which is called Chopper, was written by none other than Robert Zemeckis of Back to the Future fame.
Yeah.
So I think this might have been his first major credit.
And what was funny
now that I'm thinking about it,
me being a writer, I'm looking at the motorcycle that the guy's on. It's some kind of BSA. I don't remember what model it was.
They said
Something
what it
from
was in the show.
I'm looking at that thing now. Probably a 650, probably a 650 split single or a twin. I don't know. Something along the lines of Triumph. But you look at it now and it's like, man, a kid would be riding that today.
Yeah.
I mean, it just looks like a fucking toy compared to a modern motorcycle.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny, Just how,
but that's what people
that was
were...
some badass shit back in the 60s. And, the motorcycle was actually, I think, from the 60s.
Or the 50s.
Or the 50s.
They said the gang was from the 50s.
Yeah.
Like, they had killed the guy back in the 50s, and they accidentally cut his head off during a prank.
But in the early 70s, that motorcycle still would have been viable, compared to the other shit that they had. CB750 came out, and it was a lot more. But even that is almost kind of like a toy compared to what you have today. Fucking 180 horsepower motorcycles in a little bitty package. It's just, you're talking with these, you're talking about maybe like 30 horsepower, 25, just a little putt-putts. But he was riding it good, whoever was riding that thing. It was like a super scrambler type thing. Yeah, it was a good episode.
Yeah, Samantha said, wasn't that the plot of Night Strangler? I think she was talking about, when I was talking about the Norlis tapes.
Yeah,
it's pretty much the same plot.
For people in the comments section, you have to realize that there's a big delay by the time you're hearing us and we get your messages and see them. So sometimes we lose the context. We had a guy last week making comments. We had no idea what the fuck he's talking about.
He seemed like he was talking to somebody else.
It's like he's talking, because there's no context to what he's responding to.
It didn't sound like he was responding.
Yeah,
he wasn't being abusive though.
No,
so I was just
we didn't ban him.
Whatever, we just ignored him.
Had no idea what that motherfucker's talking about.
Nope. CB said an 80s horror film sees Jack the Ripper time traveling to the 80s to 80s America from London Bridge. It was moved to America called Terror at London Bridge. I've heard of that movie, but I've never seen it. Well, and then you also had Time After Time from 1979 with Malcolm McDowell and David Warner. And that had Jack the Ripper coming to 1979 San Francisco in H.G. Wells' Time Machine. One of my favorite movies of the 1970s. I've seen it probably 400 fucking times.
And I don't have it.
We don't have that?
No.
We reviewed it, and I did a big, long thing on it on my thing,
I was going to buy it, never actually got around to it.
I love that movie. It's just
I don't think I have it. No.
It's so good. Ben said there were a few Jack the Ripper traveling into modern day films, I think. Yeah, and I don't know if they were all based on that Robert Bloch story, which I think came out in 1943. But I know for sure there was a Thriller episode based on it, and that Star Trek episode was based on it. And the Ripper episode of this is kind of based on it. It's the same idea. Like, I don't think it's a direct adaptation, but it's pretty much the same concept. Even though I'm not really sure if it was acknowledged. I didn't really look at the credits. But yeah, Tammy was saying, what if he doesn't have a girlfriend, that's one less actor to pay?
Yeah.
True that.
I think a lot of it had to do with writing.
Probably. And to be honest, I don't know. I guess because I hadn't seen the series. I saw the shit in the order that it came out. Like, I saw the movies first, and then I saw the series, just like you would have if you'd seen them in the 70s. So when you see the first one, and he has a girlfriend, and then she disappears at the end, and he can't find her, and it's this big thing. And then in the second one, I don't even remember if they address that she disappeared. Maybe he brings it up. But then, like, he has him and Vincenzo are both they both end up in Seattle through some contrivance and are working together. And because it was the same actor was in those two actors were in both movies and all the series. Everyone else was different. But they pick up like a showgirl, I think, or somebody, and like she helps them with their stuff. And actually, at the end of the Night Strangler, she goes to, because they get shit canned again, which is implied that has happened to Kolchak like lots of times. He's always getting fired, and he's been bouncing all over the country from newspaper to newspaper. So at the end of the Night Strangler, him and Vincenzo both get fired, and they are going to go back to New York City, which I think is where where Kolchak is originally from. And they take this showgirl or whatever with them. Like, she's in the car and she's going on the road trip, like, cross country.
Yeah.
But they didn't really address that in the series. Because the series, like I said, is not set in New York City. It's set in Chicago. Even though, like I said, most of it was shot in L.A. They do have, like, some outside scenes, like, establishing shots of Chicago and stuff. But all the stuff driving around, that was all Los Angeles.
Yeah, they were probably getting ready for a series when they did that. Because if you have a series, you're going to have a female on the series. Especially if she's good looking. So that you're getting guys to watch the series.
Yeah. But like I said, originally, what the original intention was to do a third movie after that movie came out. But then ABC decided, no, let's do a series instead. Okay. And then when they did the series, they just completely forgot about that woman. Yeah. And they completely forgot about the New York City thing that they were doing. Well, it goes
back to also what I was saying, the television studios at the time, the series, they knew that shit, they would make shit just so it would go into syndication by this point. And they knew that when it was in syndication, you couldn't guarantee what order it would be played in.
Right.
And they also couldn't guarantee when someone would enter watching the series. So they wanted each episode to be
like
a standalone.
Yeah. I can understand.
And there was no overarching continuity to them.
It's not like now where you can binge watch 8 hours of a show in one evening, you know what I mean?
Because when you're television, it was just given to you when they were ready to give it to you.
Yeah.
So you couldn't dictate when you were going to see it, whatever. And if it was something that required you to know what had happened before, you'd get in, you jump into it, you go, man, I don't know what's going on. And then they'll lose you.
Who's this?
Yeah, they'll lose you as a viewer back then. Yeah. And when they did that, they'd lose all that advertising revenue because it was about selling advertising revenue. Yeah. It wasn't about really entertaining you or teaching you anything. It was about getting your fucking eyeballs on that screen because they were going to show you some commercials. That's what they were paid to do.
Sell you some Gaines burgers.
Yeah. Sell you Gaines burgers, Pampers, cigarettes. Actually, no, I think cigarettes were off television by...
Yeah, you could advertise cigarettes on TV until maybe the 70s. I think there was some kind of law passed you could do it after that. You could still do it in print.
Yeah.
Like in magazines and stuff, but I don't think you could do it on TV. But
yeah, fucking, I recommend it. Me and Jen both recommend it. You can get it off Amazon for a mere, I think it was $12, wasn't it? $12? I think I might have told it.
Yeah.
Which would probably be about the same price as getting it off of Amazon.
Yeah, because I think you can rent it various places. Like I said, somebody has...
You might as well just buy it and you have it in hard copy.
Some of the episodes up on YouTube. Because we watched the first 7 of them on YouTube.
But they didn't have them all.
And we were just like, well, fuck it. It was cheap. So
it was cheap, so I just bought it. And it's now part of the collection.
So what did you think about the one UFO episode that they did? Which was the 3rd episode. It's called They Have Been, They Are, They Will Be.
It was a creative way of having a UFO episode where you don't have to show any UFO flying in the sky. Yeah. And you don't have to show any aliens.
Because he was invisible.
Right. Convenient. And when they show the fucking UFO on the ground, it looks terrible.
It does look pretty bad.
It looks like a trailer.
Which might have been what it was.
Yeah.
But I did like the angle of the alien. Basically, it was almost kind of like his ship broke down, and he landed on Earth, and he needed something to eat. Yep. So he started going around killing zoo animals and eating all their bone marrow.
Yep.
And then he had to go to the observatory and look up a star map because he didn't know because his ass was lost.
Then he had to steal a bunch of electronics. Steal a bunch of electronics to fix his shit.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he leaves.
Stealing all the electronics.
So it was. I saw what they were doing. I was okay, all right. But you have to understand that story in the context of the time. The reason why the story is good is Kolchak and all his wittiness.
Yeah,
and his witticisms.
It's not necessarily, and like I said, I think the fact that his character is the way it is what made that show work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think it almost kind of made it, because he was such a grounded character, that it made it more believable, no matter how outlandish it got.
Yeah.
I was going to say, okay, because there's a couple other episodes just real quick I wanted to address, because there was one called Firefall. And this one was kind of interesting because this one not only had spontaneous human combustion, which actually, now that you mention it, the zombie shit, like in the second one, the episode was just called The Zombie. The zombie makeup in that, like, looked pretty good, like, for 70s TV. But I'm gonna say the spontaneous human combustion, like, the burn effects in this episode, Firefall, looked really good. Like, those looked like real burned dead bodies to me. But the thing about it was that it wasn't just about spontaneous human combustion. It was actually a lot more convoluted than that. What it was this dude who was an arsonist and like a petty criminal got bumped off by mobsters or something. And he was so jealous or mad of this famous concert. He was a conductor? Conductor. That he decided that he was going to essentially like be a doppelganger of this guy and go around making people spontaneously combust.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds weird, but it's like it did work.
I forgot how he was doing it. Some kind of chemical?
No, it was no. He was just
psychic?
It was supernatural.
Supernatural.
It was supernatural. He was basically like pulling a fire starter on him.
At first, they thought it was chemicals. Remember, they were looking for chemicals.
Yeah, but, well, that's the first thing you would think probably, or it's like, oh, they were smoking in bed and blah blah blah, like they would normally think.
So that's how they handled spontaneous human combustion.
Yeah, so it wasn't just that. There was like another layer on top of it, which was like a doppelganger.
Yeah, they burn up.
So he wasn't just killing people he didn't like. He was also trying to frame
some dude
the famous conductor guy who he was jealous of.
Yeah, I forgot about
like
that.
for doing it.
Yeah,
because he was like appearing as him.
Burns up a beautiful bikini girl,
like right by the pool.
Right by the pool. They were
I was like,
how the hell did that happen? Yeah, and she's burnt to crisp.
So many. Yeah, it was like I said, I was like, that's pretty messed up.
Yeah,
that's pretty messed up. And then you had one called The Devil's Platform, which had good old Tom Skerritt in it, and that one, I think, was the partial inspiration for The Omen, because he's like a politician in it, and he made a pact with Satan, and he can like shapeshift into a dog, like a devil dog.
Yeah, they're Rottweilers.
It was a Rottweiler, but it was funny because in the 70s, I guess Rottweilers weren't real commonly known, because I was like, oh, obviously it's a Rottweiler, but there was like a scene where Kolchak's like looking through a book of breed of dogs, like, I've never seen a dog like this. I'm like, it's a Rottweiler. What are you talking about?
They probably weren't that popular.
But maybe they didn't have them like they're not as prevalent.
You knew what a German Shepherd was in a lab back then, but maybe not.
Yeah, I kind of feel like German Shepherds were a lot more common back then.
Yeah, Doberman Pinscher.
Yeah, I guess so. But like I said, maybe a lot of people hadn't seen Rottweilers. But yeah, and somebody mentioned too that Richard Keel, Jaws, obviously from the James Bond movies, or Ega, from that terrible caveman movie that was on MST3K. He was in a couple of them. I think Richard Keel might have played Per Malfait, like the swamp monster in the Spanish Moss Murders episode. But you couldn't tell it was him, obviously, because he was just under all this like swamp makeup. But he was definitely in one called Bad Medicine, where he played this Native American demon kind of thing called, what was he called? Diablero? Yeah, and like his whole thing, like he would show up. He could also shapeshift. He could shapeshift into a crow and a coyote, right? I think that was it. Yeah. And so he could like be a crow and he could like fly through people's windows, and then he'd be like, ta-da, and then suddenly it's Richard Keel, except looking like a Native American. And like in the whole getup. And he was like killing all these like old stuffy society women and like stealing their jewelry. Like they all had real expensive like diamonds and shit like that, and he was stealing that, and they couldn't figure out what was happening. And it turned out that he was some kind of demon, that he was like cursed, I guess, to like he had to like they explained it in there, like he had to like eternally like gather treasure, like that was his curse. So he was going around like killing these old society ladies and like stealing their bracelets and shit like that. So there was that too. I think we've mentioned most of the other ones. Like I said, there was a robot one, Mr.
Yeah,
Wayne,
the robot one. Yeah.
Which was actually, I actually thought that robot one, it was alright. It wasn't my favorite one.
Yeah.
I liked the look of the robot. It was kind of creepy. Although if you're making a robot, like it's an android. Like why would you make it look like that? I mean, because it looks like it was a person, obviously, like in kind of like a
it was trying to make a face for itself.
But it had its face was just like circuit boards.
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of cool looking.
It was 70s, man. Fucking, They didn't know what a robot. They called shit robots back then. It's a robot. It's a robot, you know.
Yeah, I've seen that in a lot of movies from like the 50s and 60s. Yeah, they say robot.
Yeah, the people that are writing don't know anything about robots. They're just
robot.
What will look cool on camera? Oh, just put that on it. Yeah, and it had to be cheap.
They did kind of talk a little bit though about. They didn't say AI, obviously, but the lady that built the robot was trying to teach it morality. Was like trying to teach it right from wrong.
Yeah.
And so they did kind of address. I mean, it didn't work. It was killing everybody, but I think but the implication was that maybe if she'd had more time with it, she could have done it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, I guess, it's not really that old of an idea, like the AI and everything like that, but because it was going on, because they had Westworld and all that kind of stuff with the androids. That was in the 70s too. So, I kind of feel like that was a whole thing. And like I said, there was a witch one set in like a fashion house, which was called the Trevi Collection. That one was pretty good too. There was one with a succubus.
Yeah, there was a succubus one.
There was a succubus one. That one was like the succubus.
That was okay.
The succubus was taking over the bodies of young women who just died. I don't know if it was so much killing them as just they just happened to die and they're like, hey, free body. And then they would go and seduce men and then they'd give them heart attacks, and I guess she was like draining their energy.
Yeah, they're implying they fucked them to death.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't show that obviously, but but that's kind of what the thing was. And then there was one about a knight, like a ghost knight or something that came to life.
Well, it was haunted, cursed armor.
Yeah, there was nobody in it.
Yeah,
but it was just like walking around killing people because they were turning the museum into a disco.
Yeah,
and the knight was mad about it.
The reason why they did that is because I remember when I was a little kid back in the 70s, there were all kinds of references to the Black Knight.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It's a black painted armor suit, and I don't think there was anything to the Black Knight. That was just like a fucking trope, a Black Knight.
Yeah,
and. So they had to come up with some kind of story so they could have a Black Knight in it. And it was just a cursed suit of armor made by a sorcerer going around killing
like
people.
a necromancer. And the only way you could kill it was this other big, ridiculously huge axe that had been blessed by a pope or something.
Yeah.
That was like in the same museum.
And Kolchak does it.
And he's just like sitting there going,
I can't pick it up.
It's like really big. Yeah. He's just like, I can't And then luckily for him, the knight kind of fell on it. So... I mean, well, the thing about it, Kolchak usually did end up defeating the monster in the end sometimes. Sometimes the monster kind of got defeated because of just circumstances. Like in the case of the youth killer one about Helen of Troy, that was sucking out all the energy. Like, she would find a person that was like really youthful and vital and beautiful, and then she would like make them age like in a minute. And then they would die. And even though they were like 20 before, and they looked like they were 100.
Yeah.
And so, but the thing about it was that Kolchak found out about her, but he didn't destroy her. He kind of went in and like kind of sort of fucked up her temple a little bit, but then like the goddess that she was praying to was the one that fucked her over.
Yeah.
So it's like, Kolchak didn't really do that.
The goddess fucking extracted vengeance on her.
Yeah, because she was like, because the last like sacrifice she gave wasn't good enough or something like that. But I guess like Kolchak was there being like, hey, she gave you one that wasn't good enough or that wasn't perfect or something. So I guess he like narked on her, and that's how it was. Narked on her. But so I liked that about his character though, is that he wasn't always like this big heroic. Like a lot of times he just kind of bumbled into things, but because he was so dogged in his pursuit of truth, and he was like the only one that had figured this stuff out and was like, I have to save everybody. There's a vampire or there's a werewolf or whatever or what have you. And nobody believed him. So he's like kind of on his own. And the shit this dude did, I mean, he had no qualms at all about just fucking breaking and entering. He was like waltz into places.
Stealing shit from
people. He would steal shit.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? He had like no...
Going to people's fucking cabinets.
Yeah, like no compunction at all. Yeah. He would just be like sleek.
You go to jail for it. He was doing it.
Well, yeah. And I mean, the way that he did it though, it's like you were almost kind of like, that's all right. You know what I mean? Like, because he's
trying to make the story unfold.
He was trying to make the story unfold. So the fact that he was obviously in real life, like obviously you would never get away with
breaking and entering
all the shit, because he broke and entered so many times. And then in the Night episode, he was legit in a woman's apartment when the Knight came in and axed her to death.
Yeah.
And he got knocked out, so the Knight didn't kill him. But like then the cops showed up, and he's in the apartment, like in the next room.
He'd been accused of murder.
I mean, they did take him to jail.
Yeah.
But I guess because he was unconscious. But yeah, I mean, he would have been prime suspect because he was right there in the fucking apartment, and she was just like axed to death in the bathroom. So it's like he was always coming up with like being in situations like that and not getting into trouble. Like he did get in trouble, but not
really.
Not really. Like
it
never
been
had.
Got fucking first degree murder.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Yep," and they'd just throw the key away.
Yeah,
that's probably what they would do.
Yeah.
But so that was, I think that was like part of the fun of it, though. Like I said, it wasn't zany, but it didn't take itself all that seriously.
No, it's a lighthearted, positive.
Like, it had creepy moments. Yeah. Like, it did actually have creepy sequences and stuff like that. And it did take itself seriously sometimes. But I think it knew what kind of show it was, that it was just supposed to be fun and entertaining.
Yeah, exactly.
And, yeah, so it didn't, so it wasn't real. I think what happened with... I haven't seen it, but the show, they did a remake of it in 2005 with Stuart Townsend, who was in Queen of the Damned.
Yeah.
And I saw some clips of it. And I think the reason why it failed was because it took itself too seriously. And from, kind of a brief review of it that I watched, he said, I feel like this was not trying to be a Kolchak remake. I just felt like this was trying to be an X-Files ripoff, is what I thought. And it took itself too seriously.
Yeah.
The character was not old enough. The actor was not old enough or grizzled enough, to play that character.
Yeah.
And he's and it just didn't have that sense of, fun or that sarcastic wit to it.
Yeah, there's a whimsicalness to the fucking to the series. It's not... It's entertainment.
Yeah, and like I said, the dialogue in it, especially all the dialogue between, particularly Kolchak and his editor, Tony Vincenzo, but he's also got that real fucking annoying coworker, Updike, that he calls Uptight.
Yeah.
And that dude is just this prissy, irritating motherfucker.
Well, they got him coded as
gay. And they hate each other.
They got him coded as
so they're always
sniping. They got him gay coded as a as a prissy.
Yeah, he's real prissy.
Busybody that's trying to fucking,
He's real
fun. But he is funny. He's got a lot of funny shit.
He does have a lot of funny lines.
He's got a funny
and the two of them play really well off each other because, like I said, Kolchak is just kind of this sloppy. He always wears the same outfit, and he's always kind of rumpled. And
I think what they were doing was play on the Odd Couple.
Yeah,
we had Felix Unger and fucking
it was
was a prissy gay dude and a sloppy fucking straight dude living together.
It was kind of and they couldn't stand each other.
But they were friends.
And then you had the older lady, Miss Emily, who does the puzzles and the advice. She's the advice columnist. And she's super sweet, and I really like the interaction with them too. So sometimes the four of them just being in the office, they would just have these really funny lines off each other. And I would recommend, I don't know if y'all are as deaf as I am, but I usually, even if I can hear the dialogue, I like to put the closed captioning on because sometimes you miss stuff. Yeah. And I'm glad we had the closed captioning on for this because I would have missed a lot of really funny shit because I wouldn't have heard it completely.
Yeah, these are all closed captions.
And I would recommend putting the closed captioning on so you don't miss it.
AI generated. It's not AI generated.
Yeah, it's actually most of it is correct. Yeah. There were a couple misspellings in there I noticed, but you know how I do.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and shut it down. I got food downstairs.
All right, so we're going to go eat. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. I've been wanting to do this, like I said, for a really long time. But yeah, I would definitely recommend watching the series. Watch the movies first, though. There are two of them because they came out. I
think they're on YouTube for free.
They came out first.
Aren't they on YouTube first?
I don't remember where I watched them. Right. I might have seen them on YouTube or I might have seen them somewhere else. It was a while back. But watch those first, and if you like that, the series is like that, but funnier. The tone is a little bit funnier. But, I mean, the original movie is kind of funny, too. But, they kind of went a little bit more in that direction. But, like I said, it's not zany funny. It's kind of more, witty funny. So, a lot of the dialogue is, really good. And, like I said, I like a lot of the sarcasm and shit like that. It's just, a really well-written series. There was so much fucking talent behind this. And a lot of the people that did, David Chase, who was, I think, a producer on this. And he went on to do The Sopranos and all of that. So, this was an early early jobs for like a lot of people that went on to do like a lot of bigger shit in Hollywood. So yeah, so you can tell that there's a lot of really good writing and shit like that behind this. Kolchak for some reason is still, well, not for some reason, it's good, but it really got a huge cult following, and there are still to this day graphic novels about this character that come out like every month. I think Moonstone Publications or something like that, like they put out like prose novels and graphic novels about Kolchak. And I heard, this is not going to happen now because it was a long time ago, but I heard like a long time ago that Disney was going to do a movie. I thought Tim Burton was, or no, actually Tim Burton was maybe attached to it, but I thought maybe Edgar Wright was going to direct it, but they were going to have Johnny Depp play Kolchak, which I don't think would have worked. I saw like a guy, this guy I was watching earlier, that had like his dream remake, and he said if he was going to do a remake, he would have Bryan Cranston be Kolchak, and I was like, oh, that would be perfect. He would be perfect. So I was like, that was a really, really good call. He's like, yeah, they're not going to do it, but, But yeah, obviously that's not going to happen. And like I said, I really don't think they should remake it. It's just like such a 70s property. I haven't read any of the graphic novels that are still ongoing, so I don't really know. I think they've done crossovers with Sherlock Holmes and various other things. But I don't know. I just think it's of its time, and I think that it's good from that time period. And I don't think they should try to modernize it or anything like that, because I think it'll just mess it up. And you're not going to get the same vibe with a different actor, because Darren McGavin was just that role, you know what I mean? So somebody else, it just wouldn't be the same. But yeah, so we're going to wrap it up for this evening. Thank you very much for dropping by and hanging out with us tonight. Remember to come by Wednesday night for our regular show. We're going to be talking about the Skull and Bones Society, secret society at Yale. That was what won in the poll. So that's what we're going to be talking about on Wednesday. So hopefully you guys can join us for that. So yeah, have a good rest of your evening. Have a good day tomorrow, you guys. And we will see you on Wednesday night. Good night.